In the last video, we showed you how to create an account and then how to install WordPress. So here's our basic WordPress install, and it doesn't look like much. So in this video, we're going to show you how to configure some basic site settings so that you can begin creating your content for your professional blog or online website. So the first thing you'll notice is it says PBA Nursing, and then our little tagline we created in the last video, nursing leads the way. So we're going to show you where you can change this if you like. And then it's showing you this sample post, Hello World. And if we click on it, you'll notice that it takes you to pbanursing.org/Hello World. And so we'll show you how you can configure that as well. Along the side, there's some basic stuff here we can also configure. But what we need to do right now is go to Login and click Login. Your username, if you followed my guide, is going to be Webmaster, and then whatever password you chose. If you didn't follow my guide, or if you forgot to change the username, the default username is admin. So if Webmaster doesn't work and you don't remember what you did, try admin. Okay, now that you've logged in, you see this, they call it a dashboard. So there's a number of things you can do from here, but right now, the number one thing we're going to do is go down to settings, and we're going to change some general settings. So click on general, and you can change your site title if you need to. You can also change your tagline. And right here, you can change your URL, your WordPress URL and site address. Do not, under any circumstances, change these unless you really know what you're doing. If you just change these and hit save, you're going to break your website. So you need to do more configuration than just changing right here. So remember what I said. Don't just change right here. You'll break your website. If you have a different email address you want to start using instead of the one you created in the first step in the installation phase, you can do that here. If you have a membership website where you want to allow people to create accounts, you can do that by default right here. And this new user role. By default, all new users will become subscribers, which means they can read content and make comments, and that's it. A contributor can write articles and comments, and that's it. An author can create their own content and then edit their own content. An editor can create their own content and edit anyone's content. An administrator can change these settings as well as do everything that an editor can do. So it's highly recommended that you create a new account that only has either author or editor privileges, and you use that one by default. That way it's harder for people to mess up your entire site by accident. And by people, the most likely person to do it is, well, you. Time zone, you should change this to a city near you. So I've changed it to New York, which is representative of Eastern time. And then you can change your date format and your time format. I really love 12-hour time, but I'm going to leave it as PM. You can change it to whatever day of the week you want it to start on. Usually it's going to be a Sunday or a Monday. And you can also change your language. Go ahead and hit save. Next, we have reading. And the reading tab, there's one really important thing that you want to do here. And that is you're going to choose whether you want your front page to display your latest post or whether you want it to display an article, a page. So let's just talk very briefly about the differences between pages and posts. Posts in WordPress are meant to be episodic content, such as a podcast episode or a news article. And by default, and it's really hard to change this behavior, WordPress always wants to display them from the most recent down to the least recent, to the oldest. It always wants to give you the most recent article and then the next one and then the next one. So if you have if you have articles you always want to display in a very specific order, like page 1, then page 2, then page 3, then instead of using posts, you're going to want to use pages. So in addition to being episodic and always wanting to display them most recent first, WordPress also assigns categories to categories to posts. So your posts can be categorized, and then you can also use tags. We'll give you a different article or a different video on how to use categories and tags, because that's a whole different ball of wax. For right now, just know that if you want structured content that you want someone to do, to see in a in a structured way, page 1, page 2, page 3, use pages. Pages are really good for things like about me, about the company, terms of service, a resources page. All of those are really nice uses for pages. And then posts, again, are more like news stories or episodic content. So right now, you get to decide which of these you would like your default homepage to be. For right now, you can leave it at posts because you really don't have any content at all. But if you have a very strong vision in mind that you always want someone to see, like, here's my story and here's what this website can do for you, then you probably want to change it to static. If you do change it to static, you'll also be able to choose which page you want. And at the moment, there's only one page, the sample page. You can also change how many blog pages show at most. You can leave all this stuff at default. One other thing you might want to consider is whether you want your full text of each article to be displayed in a list or if you want just a summary to displayed. So if someone is looking through articles, and let's say you have 4,000 or 5,000 page articles that come up in a list, that person is going to see all 4,000 or 5,000 page articles completely in a row, which is an awful lot of scrolling. If you want someone to just see a summary of each of those and they can click on it to get the whole thing, then you want to choose summary. So the default is full text, which is more blog style, as opposed to summary, which would be kind of like more of a news site or, have whatever you want to do, but just know the difference. And then you do not want to check this if you want Google or Bing or any of the other search engines to actually find your site. Go ahead and click save. Actually, I'm going to keep it on latest posts and click save. Next thing we're going to do is come down to permalinks. Now, permalinks are how your articles will show up on a website. So the default is going to be either plain or by day and name. So you can see here the example by day and name is going to say in 2016, January 19th, there was an article called Sample Post. Alternatively, you can change to some other ones. Personally, my favorite one is this post name where it's going to be just the website and then the article name. The one thing you got to be careful about with this is if you have more than one article with the same name, things can get a little bit confusing. You can also choose some custom ones if you like. And then remember earlier I said that posts by default are going to have some kind of category to them. You can choose to name things differently. So by default, it will say all posts will be under something like your site domain /category /article name. And if you want to change that to be domain name /topic /article name, you can do that if you want to. But for right now, we just want to click on post name and click Save Changes. All right, at this time, we've made the most important configurations. Now we're going to create a new user that we will use as our primary author. So username, you can choose whatever you like. So in this case, let's just choose PBA Nursing as the username. You can choose whatever email address you want. So in this case, we will use nursing@pba.edu, and then you can choose whatever name you want to give this person. In real life, you're probably going to use your first name and your last name. And then if you have a website, well, in our case, we do have a website. And we're going to give it the main university website, but we're going to be linking directly to the School of Nursing. And then for the password, you can give a password there if you like. We can hide it so you can't see what I'm typing in. And then you can have it send the user an email that says, hey, you're a new account. And in this case, we're going to choose editor. So you probably want to give yourself editor permission so that you can edit anyone's article if you have multiple users in the future, and click add new user. All right, so now we notice we have 2 users, and we can edit their profiles here. If we log out and log back in as the new person we just created, then we're going to find all of a sudden that you can't edit these other things. You can only edit yourself. All right, one last thing we need to do before we are ready to begin, and that is install a couple plugins. So these are a couple that I highly recommend that you use, and you can feel free to skip this step if you like. So click on plugins, and then we're going to delete the Hello Dolly. Yes, delete it. And if you have Akismet here, Akismet is an anti-spam plugin, so you can activate that, and you can actually activate it for free, although it looks like you have to pay for it. If you are not making money off your website, you don't need to pay for it. If you're making money off your website, you should pay for it, but you can activate that here. We're going to skip that in this step, and instead we're going to click Add New. And then we are going to search for pretty links. That would help if I spelled correctly. So Pretty Links, we're going to install Pretty Link Lite, and this is going to be a nice test case for so you can see how these work generally speaking. So it installed it. Now we have to activate it. And now it shows us what it looks like here. Now it looks like you should be able to just edit here, but if you edit here, it's going to take you to a place that is not going to make any sense. Instead, you're going to look over here on the left-hand side, and now you'll see Pretty Link. Now sometimes plugins will add, instead of having their own menu right here, it'll add to make a submenu under settings or a submenu under one of these other things. But in this case, Pretty Link adds its own setting. Now what Pretty Links is going to allow us to do is going to allow us to create our own custom web links that are going to link directly to a document that ordinarily has a different address. So we're going to add a Pretty Link, and as an example, so we're going to tell it to do this temporary, by default, temporary redirect. If you do permanent, that's going to imply that wherever you have is permanently moved somewhere else, and we don't want to do that, because if we ever want to change the target to a different place, it'll keep sending it to the old place if anyone has already visited our site once. So we're going to paste in this crazy long URL, and then we're going to call this grad handbook. So now anytime we want to send the graduate handbook to someone, instead of having to memorize this big long thing or paste that into an email, we can now just say go to pbanursing.org/grad handbook. And we're going to call the title of that Nursing Graduate Student Handbook. And then you can pretty much ignore the rest of it. You can add a new group if you like. So like let's say you wanted to add the group handbooks. If you had more than one type of handbook, you could do that. That's pretty much it. We're going to also say no follow this link, because we don't want search engines finding the handbook. We want that to be not followed. So go ahead and click create. And now, just to test this out, if we go pbanursing.org /grad handbook, and it takes us to the graduate handbook. So that is just one example of some of the cool things that plugins can do for you. So I highly recommend that you use Pretty Links if you ever want to send people to sites that have kind of hard to remember things. So that's one example. So for a professional blog, generally speaking, I would recommend at least having one plugin that allows you to collect email addresses and integrates with an email list, and then also one that will allow you to collect information from visitors, such as a contact form. There are a lot of other ones you can use, and I'll give you some suggestions in the notes to this video. So we'll just move on to the next part. The very last thing you might want to do before you begin creating your content is thinking about what sorts of posts you would like to create, and then maybe a couple categories. So we're going to take a quick look at categories. So if you click on the posts and then go to categories, you'll find categories. Right now you only have one, and it's called uncategorized. So to name it, you just put whatever you want in as the name. So let's say you choose news. And then it's going to ask you for the slug. The slug is going to appear in the URL of categories. So in the case of news, it would just be news, all lowercase. And if you have spaces, you replace the space with a hyphen. If you don't care what it is, you can just leave it blank and WordPress will create one for you. Some themes also will pull the description. So if you want to put in a description, you can do that, and you can click Add New. Now, you'll notice right here where it says parent, and so you can have nesting categories. However, by default, if let's say that you have, let's say you have news, and then you have world news and nursing news. If you put something into world news, it's not going to automatically be in news also, and it gets really confusing when you have multiple categories. So the general recommendation is that you only have very few categories, make them very broad, and make sure that everything can fit into them. If you want to actually describe topics, then you should use tags, which we'll look at in just a moment. So that would be categories. So again, I would have very few categories, if at all possible, because it just makes things a lot simpler. There's a lot of people who don't use any categories, and the only thing they use are tags. So if we go back over to the side, we'll see just below categories are tags. Now, tags are essentially kind of like an index, and so you can have these be searchable, and you can also have them be browsable. So categories sometimes we describe as a table of contents, and then tags are more like an index. So you can be a lot more loose with these because there's not going to be any implied structure to them. And you add them basically the exact same way with a name and a slug. You can also add these on the fly within the content creation window. So that's pretty much it. You are now ready to begin content creation. And in the next video, we'll go over how to actually create your first post and your first page.